listening to Keeping It Real with Janine, your guide to living an authentic, healthy life podcast. And I'm your host, Janine Strong. My guest today is the lovely and energetic Leah Lund. Before we start, I would like to announce that our internet service has been upgraded with a new dish, an upgraded tower, and a new router. So I hope that all of my recording issues I've been having the last few months are now over. Okay, on to Leah. Leah Lund is the creator of One Whole Health. She offers coaching and retreats that help you command your frequency and unlock your inner capacities so you can brave life's uncertainties and challenges and create a life you love. And as we all know, there's lots of life's uncertainties and challenges right now. So this is really appropriate for this time. Leah's programs help you reboot your brain and rewire your subconscious so that you can have the clarity, capacity, and courage to be your true self and live your life's purpose. Blending her experience in brain coaching, neuronutrient therapy, breath work, spiritual expansion, hypnotherapy, rapid transformational therapy, and holistic health coaching. Whew, that's a lot. Leah has designed her unique One Whole Health method to help you feel happier, confident, and content. She's an author, speaker, and host of the I Am Vibrant podcast. Her book, Feeling Good on Purpose, is a simple guide to balancing your energy, weight, mood, and life without quitting your day job. Hi, Leah. Welcome to Keeping It Real. How are you?
Thank you, Janine. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. I love to co-create with you, and I'm just excited to share with your audience and have this time with you.
Yeah, well, I'm excited because our brain commands everything in the body, right? So if there's something off, we will not feel good physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's really important that everything in your brain is working well, that that things are connecting properly, and neurotransmitters are doing their job.
Absolutely. The brain, I really see the brain as a miracle, first of all,
Mm-hmm.
a miracle biocomputer that we barely understand. It has such sophisticated programming, and it's an interface truly between everything physical that's going on in our body, like our hormones and our neurotransmitters and our brain chemicals, but it's also the access point of spirit. And so I couldn't agree more with what you've said. The brain is command central for the complex multidimensional beings that we are.
Mm-hmm. 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 So let's start with what do you mean by command your frequency? I wasn't sure what command your frequency meant.
Yeah, thanks for asking that
Uh-huh.
question, because words are so important because they create. They really do. Our thoughts and our words create our reality and our experience in life. And
Mhm.
so even in describing a process, something like that we put on a web page or we put in a bio, I'm very intentional about, because I know the power of words.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so for me, commanding frequency, I'll start with the frequency piece,
Okay,
because
sure.
I'm sure in the audience here, some will there'll be varying levels of knowledge of, what do you even mean by frequency, to
Mhm.
somebody that really, really understands it. So
Sure.
simply put, every atom in every one of our cells puts out an electricity. If you want to get specific, it's 1.4 volts per atom. And so
Okay.
even just in our brain alone, there's more electricity being produced by our brain than if you put all the cell phones in all the world together combined.
Wow.
So
I did not know that.
we're highly electric. And this energetic frequency is obviously invisible. So we could think of it as a light wave, but it's invisible. And it emits from all of our cells. And it also modulates or controls the proteins in our cells. So basically our vibration, it's a real thing. It's not just this esoteric kind of concept or new agey concept. It's a real thing that's
Mhm.
happening out of every cell, and it it sends messaging to the protein specifically in the cell that then determine the cell, whether the cell is growing or even whether the cell dies. That's one aspect of our frequency.
Okay.
The frequency also goes out into every single living thing, and everything really in our world puts out a frequency as well. And all of our frequencies go out into the atmosphere, the stratosphere, into the electromagnetic field, and interact with each other. And so this is why sometimes, so animals have this as well, of course, and animals are so much more attuned to it. So an animal will pick up a frequency of another animal a half a mile away and they'll run. If they're a prey animal and that frequency is coming from a predator animal, they will sense it, they will know it, they will act on it, they will get themselves out of harm's way. But as human beings, we're not really taught to focus on that aspect of ourselves. And in fact, much more often we're taught not to feel and not to sense. And it is said that language was even created to cover emotion, and emotion is another measurement or outcome of our energy. Emotions are energy, and we're kind of taught to shut all that down and ignore it, unlike animals, and not act off of it. Certainly, right? We have to act off of our logic and our intelligence. So that's what your frequency is, and how you command it is there's a lot of different things that you can do to be intentional about the frequency that you're putting out, as well as there's a lot of things that you can do to navigate the frequency coming in from the outside. And that's what I say command, because it really is at will. It really is much more in our control than out of our control to choose and to decide what frequency we're operating at.
Got it. Now, how did you get into all of this? What inspired you?
So that's an interesting question, because
it usually is.
It's like hindsight, right? Hindsight, it starts to all make sense.
Yeah.
And pieces are dropping in every day that makes sense. But what I can say is that when I was a young girl, and this definitely led directly to the work I do with the brain. But when I was a young girl, I had these two images, or these two stories about who we are and who I was. And one of them, probably because I was raised on a farm, I was around a lot of animals. Like, I saw life as life force. I saw birth, I saw death, I saw God's creation, I saw plants, I saw, it was a very natural setting. So I had this sense of God, and I had a sense of the nature of things.
Okay.
And that was really strong. At the same time, I had family members, and in particular, a grandmother that suffered from extreme depression and anxiety. And we had a family farm, 2 generations family farm. And I could go spend the whole time on the story of that, but I'll just keep it simple to say her depression and anxiety had her very, very fearful of being alone. So even at 9 years old, when it was harvest season, everybody had a job. My mom would be out combining grain. My dad would be out. My grandfather would be out. And my role was really, I called it babysitting grandma. I would be sitting with her to keep her company so that her panic could be in some kind of control. And so I got this vision of something's wrong with our brains, our mental state as a family, because if it's happening to my grandmother, it could happen to me. Right. And so I had this sort of contrast of both things. I knew the bigger picture, the spiritual picture, that we're powerful creators and that we're part of God, and that whole aspect. And yet for many, into probably my late 30s, there was this little voice in the back of my head that believed all that, except there was then this disclaimer, except it doesn't apply to you. Right? All of that is true, except it doesn't really apply to you because your family has this issue.
Wow. So, I mean, that must have been your poor grandmother. That sounds awful.
Yeah. Well, if I'd known then, or if anybody around her had known what I know about neuronutrition that I think we're talking about, it could have been a very different picture for her.
Right.
But we just didn't know.
Right. So tell us a little bit about what you do. So it's understanding, because I'm going to be learning just as everyone else is too, but I also know how powerful this is. So, so it's about rebooting your brain and rewiring your subconscious. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So how do you do that?
Yes. And for me, the end perspective, the end game or the end goal, if I use that word, is really so we can be our full potential, right? So we
Mhm.
can be the way we are designed by creator and source, which is a manifester and a powerful creator and operating at a very open, connected frequency where whatever we desire, we can create.
Mhm.
So for me, that's the end game. And what typically gets in the way, many things can get in the way, but our subconscious programming,
Mhm.
and then sometimes our physicality, sometimes our neurotransmitter depletion or our hormones, or something's not operating as should be in our physical body, and that's a distraction or a block to
Mhm.
our purpose.
Now, how does that happen, Leah? How does the brain chemistry get messed up,
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
neurotransmitters become depleted?
Yeah. So I'll use brain chemistry and neurotransmitter level as interchangeable.
Okay.
And so I'm talking about four main groups of neurotransmitters that are responsible for helping us, in short, feel good and have attention and focus and energy and all these things. And these can get depleted. How it works, how our design is that from the proteins in our food, we make these neurotransmitters like serotonin and things, and we make ample supply, and they help us feel good in the moment. And there's extra molecules of it that after a few hours after being produced are stored in reserve. So then if we have a particular stressful situation or tough day, or it's dark outside and in the winter short days and things like that,
Mhm.
we have a reserve to draw upon, and we
Okay.
never really even notice the difference. We
Mhm.
operate at this beautiful level. But when we get depleted, then we are not making enough molecules in the first place to feel good, and we tap into our reserve over and over and over again until there's no reserve.
Mm.
So there's a few causes of this depletion of neurotransmitters. It can be a result of it can be a nutritional cause, and that can be either not eating well, eating junk and not giving your brain the nutrients it needs. But it can be even that we eat very well, but we're not absorbing
Mm.
and
Mhm.
assimilating this nutrition. So nutrition can be a cause. Lifestyle factors like chemical and substance abuse, not staying well hydrated, not getting enough sleep, not getting enough sunshine, those things can contribute as well.
Mhm.
It can be inherited. So this is what I know now about my grandmother and most of my family, is that we were all born low in serotonin and other neurotransmitters. And that's where I say,
Mhm.
if my grandmother had known that, she might have had a completely different life.
Yes.
And probably this is the greatest cause, is stress. Stress breaks
Mhm.
down our brain's ability to make these neurochemicals.
Right.
So for some people, it's one situation. Some of my clients will say this all happened when, it all changed when, and
Mhm.
maybe there was a loss or a divorce, or they were in a car accident, or something like that was a huge trauma that zapped the brain's ability to make these neurochemicals. And then for others, it's tolerating a certain level of stress chronically, never getting enough sleep, never taking
Mhm.
rest for themselves, not taking vacations, just being on the treadmill of life, and it builds up over time.
Mhm. That it does. I know. I mean, a lot of people take better care of their vehicles than they do their body.
Hmm. It's true. Yeah, it's true.
So, okay. So, what is neuronutrition then?
So neuronutrition is how we restore both the reserve and the function of the neurotransmitters. So another term for it that you might be familiar with is targeted amino acid therapy,
Mhm.
but it's the use of supplements, nutrition in supplement form, especially amino acids at therapeutic doses, along with some cofactor vitamins and minerals that help convert faster these amino acids into the neurotransmitter.
Mhm.
So you could really think of it as super duper levels of food, especially protein food, because that's where the amino acids come from.
Right.
But when we get depleted, it's hard to eat enough to to catch up and make up for the deficiency. So we use therapeutic doses of supplement for a limited period of time, not forever, for a matter of months.
Okay.
And it helps the brain catch back up.
Okay. Well, that's what I was going to say is that some people would say, well, can't you just get it through your food? And yes, you should be able to. But when you're at the point where you're depleted, you need extra help.
That's
Is
exactly
that
right.
okay?
Yep. Yep.
Right. Cool. So it's amino acids basically is I'm getting is the
Mhm.
kind of the core of it. And how do you determine what amino acids are necessary?
So I use a symptom assessment that is highly reliable. You
Okay.
can actually test your neurotransmitter levels with a blood platelet test. You'll see online a urinary test, but it's not very reliable at all.
Okay.
But that blood platelet test is usually more in research settings. So I know I have one lab across the country that if in the case of somebody pregnant or nursing, will take that step to actually do the test. But
Okay.
aside from, because then we have two brains
Right.
that we're dealing with.
Right. True.
But aside from that, the symptom assessment that I use is highly reliable and effective for gauging where somebody's at and then tracking the improvement. So it's
Okay.
simply an online ranking of 40 different symptoms on a 1 to 10 scale. And then we use that as direction. And then I choose based on that plus health history, family health history, medications, things like that somebody might be on. I choose a starting protocol, my best educated guess. and
Yeah.
then and then we really do trials, because until you actually trial one, and I teach a special process for that, trialing each individual amino acid, how you feel is going to be the ultimate indicator of if we have the right one and
Right.
the right dose, and then you have a set dose that you maintain multiple times a day for a few months.
Okay. A few months. So that would be what? That's 120 days? Or
Well, it
90
actually,
days. 90 days.
yeah.
I'm
Go
just
ahead.
curious why 3 months as opposed to 4 months or
Yeah, actually, the average time that I've seen my clients need the supplement support is somewhere between 4 and 5 months.
okay.
Some of them will need to keep taking their supplements for longer, especially if they've had a big trauma, capital T trauma, if they've been had substance abuse. Some will restore in 3 months, but the minimum time that I work with somebody is 3 months, simply because in that time we can do all the trial and adjustment, get the lifestyle pieces in line. Because for example, one of the symptoms of neurotransmitter depletion is cravings for sugar and starch. So if somebody has struggled to and those things erode the brain's ability to make these neurotransmitters, so it's a never ending circle. So once the supplements are in place, the cravings go way down, if not just are eliminated completely. And so then we can get diet in place, exercise in place, all of those lifestyle factors in that 3-month time. And then it's really keep doing what you've been doing for however many additional months it requires.
Got it. And how do you determine then when it's time to stop?
It's really simple. I call it a reverse trial, but it's stop. And you don't have to taper off of them or anything. It's just stop and see, do your symptoms return, or do you stay feeling as good as you'd been feeling now for
Okay.
months?
That's what I thought, but I thought I would,
Yep.
you know what they say about assuming.
Yeah, exactly. And you're anything but that.
Aw, thank you. So, okay, I find this fascinating because the brain it's so fascinating and both, well, you and I have been working with the Healy and I'm seeing myself, I'm much calmer. I'm finding that I'm not spinning thoughts and so I'm also wondering, like for myself, maybe working with neuronutrition would be a good companion to working with the frequencies. So we'll definitely have to talk later about moi.
Sure.
So what typically do you see? Like if somebody's having anxiety, or maybe they're having trouble with anger management, or maybe chronic fatigue, or what kinds of symptoms do people usually have that they turn to you
Mm-hmm.
to help for help?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the assessment is actually 40 different symptoms. I won't go through all 40, but I'll pick,
Hmm.
the most common. So anything that you might be on antidepressant type SSRI
Hmm.
medication. So anxiety, depression, irritability, anger, fear, it really does come into that too,
Mm-hmm.
because um, fear and lack of confidence. So all
Very
those are
stressful.
those, yeah. So all of those are low serotonin related.
Okay.
Then there is energy, focus. So ADD and ADHD, what those diagnoses really are is either depleted, in the case of ADD, depleted dopamine and other that neurotransmitter group is called catecholamine.
Okay. Hmm.
Depletions in that. If there's an H in there, if there's hyperactivity too, then it means depleted in dopamine and serotonin.
Ah, okay.
So any of the motivation, attention, focus, ADD type things, that's another reason.
Mm-hmm.
Also, panic,
Mm-hmm.
um, inability to sleep,
Mm-hmm.
whether that's trouble getting to sleep or waking up during the night. And then endorphin related, often it looks like hormone, especially for women. We, PMS and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
that we're sort of known for. So a lot of times that's just low endorphin level. And because endorphin is our natural pleasure chemical and our natural painkiller. So when we don't have enough endorphin, we're very sensitive, and that's emotionally sensitive, also physically sensitive, and it can mean we're tearing up often, and maybe for a reason we don't even have a reason,
Mm-hmm.
or misplaced. It's something that's not even personal or related to us, and we're crying about it.
So it
And
sounds like just kind of overall hyper emotional. It is
yeah,
too reactive to
reactive.
reactive. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Okay.
Reactive and emotionally sensitive. Yeah. And then cravings can be a sign of depletion in any or all of those. There's different type of cravings. So sweet and starch is almost always low serotonin, especially if
Mm-hmm.
it's later at night. Because when
Mm.
serotonin is a really interesting neurotransmitter. The molecules of serotonin existed on our planet before human beings. So
Oh.
it's an ancient molecule, and it's partially synthesized by light. So people
Hmm.
that have seasonal affective disorder,
Mm-hmm.
that's low serotonin caused by the season, caused by the lack of daylight and sunlight of this season.
Mm-hmm.
And then
Interesting.
there's things like the low endorphin cravings can be cheese or red wine in particular, or chocolate, things that work with our opiate areas of the brain that
Mm-hmm.
trigger those. Um, and so sometimes when I hear from a client, what they crave tells me as much as that they have a craving,
Yep. Yep.
because it correlates to a certain area. If they use the word love related to
Oh, you mean like I
anything, like
love chocolate?
I love chocolate. Endorphin is our love, our pleasure
Mm-hmm.
chemical, and we're substituting with
Mm-hmm.
chocolate.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I definitely do carbs late at night. So, and I
Well, there
know
you go.
I know my serotonin levels are low. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. So I can imagine that there are people listening who are going, I want to take this test. how do they
Yeah.
how do they do that?
They absolutely. I just offer that out to anybody, and it's really self-scoring. So,
Okay.
there's no obligation or anything. If you go to my website, which is onewholehealth.com,
And that's
um,
one is in ONE, one whole
correct.
whole HWHOL.
WHOLE.
Okay. All
Yep.
right.
Health.
Onewholehealth.com. Okay.
Yep. And you'll see on there free self-scoring brain chemistry assessment.
Mhm. Okay.
And it'll go through those 40 symptoms. You'll rate them 1 to 10. The higher the number, the greater the indication of depletion.
Mhm. Okay.
So really
Interesting.
anything that's not a 3, 2, 1 on there, to me, is worth you exploring some neuronutrition, because even if it's something you've gotten used to over the years,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be that way.
Mhm.
And you weren't designed to be that way.
Mm. Well, I mean, it can make a huge difference. I mean,
Huge.
As you may know, I think we might have talked about this, you and I, that, I've been really big on thyroid issues, thyroid adrenal issues, because I've had, excuse me, I've had my own, and I keep running into people who have issues. Usually, doctors want to put people on an antidepressant,
Right.
because they're feeling down and they're depressed, and it's all related. That there's nothing in the body that is working on its own, separate from any other aspect of us.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, and in the case, I'm not by any means anti allopathic medicine. I mean, there's amazing, miraculous things that we
Right.
can do with
Right.
modern medicine, but
Mm-hmm.
but in the case of antidepressants, first of all, a third of people they don't work for in the first place.
Right.
Another third lose efficacy over 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only answer for that seems to be higher dose or add a second one.
Mm-hmm.
And never is it repairing this function that we're talking about. It's just bypassing it, and it's a crutch for it or a band-aid for it, but it's never truly repairing the brain chemistry, and the brain chemistry can be repaired.
And there are a lot of side effects.
Side effects, yes, yes.
Wow. Okay. So you talk about inner capacity. What do you mean by inner capacity? What is that?
Yeah. So our inner capacity, it really takes me back to where we started in our conversation about, knowing the truth of who we are and our potential.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
have so much more capacity than we realize sometimes. And so I identify 6 elements or 6 types of inner capacity, and physical is just
Okay.
one of them, and brain is just one of them.
Mm-hmm.
We have mental capacity, we have emotional capacity, we have energy capacity, and now we've talked frequency, so we know what that is. And then we have
Mm-hmm.
spiritual capacity
Mm-hmm.
as a capacity that's probably we can not even probably it's the capacity if we tap into it when we're praying, when we're in listening session, when we turn things over to the universe.
Mm-hmm.
That is such a strength and support that we can't even begin to understand, but I know when we practice it, it's there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I like to teach people about all those capacities and how to access them, because sometimes we can be going after solving a problem or accomplishing something with really just relying on one type of capacity. And a lot of times it's mental, right? I'm just going to
Right.
figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
think my way through this. And it'll only go so far, and you'll exhaust a lot of the other capacities and yourself in the process. When you can balance all of these, or tap into them all, or maybe use one to compensate for the other when something's, if we have a physical injury, sometimes we can use our mental capacity to still do something that we're trying to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But also if we're not capitalizing on the brain, or if you have this neurotransmitter depletion, for example, uh, it's like trying to run a marathon on a broken leg. Your physical capacity has a problem, right? Because you have a broken leg. Your mental might be saying, but I can do it anyway. But what if you worked with the brain and healed the brain? Wouldn't that be easier than that push mentality that has you? And I think we all know somebody that would do that will still run the
Oh,
marathon
yes. Yes.
marathon and throw your other leg off, or your hips
Mm-hmm.
out of balance, or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know when I used to teach Touch for Health and use it with clients, sometimes I'd get somebody who'd have an injury, and they would want me to use my skills to take the pain away so they could go back and do the same thing again. And I'm like, I don't think that's very ethical for me to do that. I mean, I could take the pain away, but not so that you can go back and re-injure it again.
Right. That's exactly. And it is, I don't know, part of our human nature, and it's appealing, the magic bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I
Mm-hmm.
just do this, then it's all fixed. But if you don't correct those root cause thoughts, beliefs, habits, patterns, the emotional capacity is huge too, because if even when we have the thinking in place and we're using some of our other capacities. If we don't have emotional capacity, what happens is an emotion will arise. I promise you, it always will.
Mm-hmm.
And then it takes us sideways, and we give up, or we quit, or we get frustrated, or, and so doing that deeper work that you're talking about so that you don't re-injure yourself
Mm-hmm.
involves also processing emotional traumas and learning to be able to feel emotion and then release it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, there's no shortcut.
Right.
As much as we'd like there to be.
I know. So, okay, so once somebody's done their neuro nutrition program and they don't need the supplements anymore, do people ever like, let's see, what would be an example? I guess if somebody gets into a really highly stressful crisis um, situation that's kind of ongoing, or have you ever had anybody need to go back on the supplements?
Good question. Occasionally, it's so the reparative process is complete, and as
Okay.
long as everything stays the same,
Mhm.
you're good to go. The thing is, our life doesn't usually stay the same.
Right.
So if you do have a increased stress at some time in the future or something like that, it's possible that you could need some support again. When I work with a client, with anyone, I make sure you understand why you're doing what you're doing, so that if you ever need to do it again, you recognize it, it's usually not the complete plan again. Maybe most people will do, if they're depleted in one neurotransmitter, they're depleted in all four that I talked about. And we repair them all simultaneously, but maybe in the future something comes up that depletes just one and not the rest. And you would know what that is. You'd recognize it. You'd know which amino acid worked for you, and just be able to give yourself that little bump. A classic example is those seasonal affective disorder situations, where I have many, many clients that just know from whenever the days get real dark, November 1, October time change, whenever it is, they need to go on their support for serotonin. They're usually okay, but again, by maybe February, and every year they do that, and that's the only one they do.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Yeah, I find that the dark, cloudy, gray winters are pretty difficult.
Yeah.
I have my light, at least
Right,
that
which
helps.
does help for serotonin. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so if somebody takes the little test you have online and they find that it looks like that what you have to offer might be helpful, what are the steps that somebody would take?
So the assessment, when it's completed, will actually come with a confirmation that does invite people to talk with me if they want to take it further. So
Okay.
you can just follow those prompts, and if for any reason email these days is sometimes unreliable, or it goes in a folder, or whatever happens, also I can be reached at Leah, which is Leah at onewholehealth.com, and just put a subject line of brain chemistry assessment or something like that, or saw you on Janine's podcast. Heard you on Janine's podcast.
Heard, yeah. And Leah, what about your book, Feeling Good on Purpose?
Yeah, so that's a guide, and it goes back to that command, and that's actually on the website too. That's a free download, and it goes back to that command, your frequency that we spoke of. It is, to me, feeling good on purpose is intentionally choosing, knowing how this being that we are, which is human and being, knowing its design, knowing how it works, so that you can be intentional how you support all aspects and dimensions of yourself to feel your absolute best.
And you said that's free on your website?
It's a free download. Yep, on the website.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right. Would it be easy for me to get a link for that and put it on the podcast
absolutely.
webpage? So people can just click on that. We'll have a link to your website.
And if you'd like, I also have one that is how to align your vibration, meaning your frequency, with what you desire.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So I'll give you that one too.
Oh, great. Okay. And what was the title of that again?
Aligning your vibration with your desires.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you. That'd be great. I'm sure people will enjoy that and get a lot out of it. So is there anything that we haven't covered that you think is important? Now you're in Colorado, right?
Yes.
And you live on a ranch,
Yes.
right? And you do retreats for women.
Yes.
Maybe you want to just mention a little bit about that,
Yeah.
because I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. So I am a nomad because one of my missions in life is to see as much of God's creation as I can. So I spend the summers here at the ranch in Colorado, and we are a mile higher than Denver. It's called Crested Butte, Colorado. We're the wildflower capital of the whole state.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, it's heaven on earth. That's all I can say. And I know everybody says that about where they live, but
No, that sounds quite beautiful.
yeah, it's an amazing place. And so once a year, I do something called the Clearpath Retreat. I do retreats within our coaching programs that are included in those programs, but this one is available to anybody. So you don't have to be coaching with me already or anything like that. You can come to this 5-day retreat, and it is mind, body, and spirit. So we really practice this commanding of our frequency in all ways, including what we eat, how we move our body, utilizing breath work, and many of the things that you mentioned at the beginning here. And so we do have one even in this year coming up September 23rd. It's not too late. I keep them small and intimate, especially this year's won't be more than 8 people so that we can have all the distancing in play and all of that. We do equine therapy with the horses.
I was just going to ask,
Yes.
do your horses help out?
They do. And I alluded to that in talking about energy and sensing, but horses in particular are so sensitive that they can find our energy block and they can pull it out, and they know where to take that energy. So it's a surrender. You can just turn energetic discord over to a horse, and they've got 4 feet and lots of intuition. Their bellies their intestine is 25 feet long. they're very intuitive animals, and they just take that energy and put it right back into Mother Earth and stir it up in the electromagnetic field. And we do amazing work with the horses.
Wonderful. So you do have a retreat coming up. You said September 23rd.
Yep.
It would be best for people to get connected with you through the website if they're interested.
Yes. So there is on the menu, there's a retreat page, and you'll see Clearpath, or they could use that email since, our time's a little short here. Use that email and just put retreat in the subject line, and I can answer questions that way.
Well, I'm so glad we connected, because I've really been just really impressed with the work you do, and I think it's so important, and I'm really glad that we have become friends through all of this.
Me too, Janine. I really I admire you so much and the work that you have done and continue to do, and talking frequency. You understand that inside out, upside down, backwards, sideways, and you're really the living embodiment of commanding frequency, if you ask me. So
well, I'm not
honored.
sure about that, but I do my best. And I keep working at it. I fall down.
And you do it so joyfully, and even if you fall down or something doesn't go exactly the way you thought, or you just pick yourself right back up and do that with this incredible high vibe, positive, joyful attitude about things, and that's why you're able to do the important work that you do.
Well, I do still have a ways to go, but at least I'm trying. And I've always felt, because I've often said, if I were to leave the planet right now, it would be fine. I've had so many adventures and such an interesting life, because I've kind of just, feel the fear and do it anyway, move forward.
Yeah.
And otherwise I probably wouldn't have a lot of the experiences that I've had if I, let my doubt or my fear get in the way. Wow. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate who you are, and I appreciate the work that you do. And I myself am going to take the test because I would like to see what comes up. I really, really appreciate your work, and I hope. I wish I could come to your retreat on the 23rd because I would love to work with horses. I have a special place in my heart for horses. If I had the energy and the time, and having horses is a lot of work.
It is.
I did when I was young. When I was a teenager, we had 2 horses, and my sister and I rode. But
Full disclosure, so grateful we have amazing caretakers, a husband and wife. And I don't know how we do it without them, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a lot. It really is. They take a lot of care, but it's so worth it.
Yeah.
And how many do you have?
We have 4, and then we actually board other people's horses. So we have close to a dozen hanging around.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, that's nice. That's great. Okay, well, thank you so much. This has been wonderful.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. Take care. Thank you for joining Leah and myself for a fun, inspiring conversation. And remember, the podcast website is realjanine.com. And for those of you who haven't heard it, Janine is Janeean. To subscribe to Keeping It Real with Janine, go to iTunes or your favorite podcast provider. And if you prefer using YouTube, I have video slideshows of my conversations. Just search Keeping It Real with Janine, and I think Real Janine works too. Do you know someone who would enjoy this very informative conversation on how to feel good with Leah Lund? I'm sure you do. Please share the love. We'd all appreciate it. Thanks for listening. Take care and be well.